The energy sector is critical for the growth of any economy because it powers the manufacturing as well as many other sectors that support any economy. And that's why the energy conversation in Kenya has been gaining pace as the country gears towards Vision 2030, where the country aims to become a newly industrialized nation. The question is, how do we lower the cost of electricity here in Kenya and, of course, improve on quality of electricity? That will be our conversation this morning. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this morning. This is Base Check, where wholesome conversation on the poultry farming will also be coming later on right here on KBC Channel 1. And of course, as I said, we are live at O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle, at KBC Channel 1 is our Twitter handle. We also have our reporters on the ground, and of course we'll be linking up with them to try and get some reactions on various issues from the president's speech yesterday during Mashujaa Day celebration in Kirinyaga. To other emerging issues, we'll be touching base with them to get to understand what exactly is happening to a county near you. Remember, in studio, we have our team of experts who will be guiding us on some of the conversation that we shall be having here, especially conversation around the cost of energy and the quality of energy in this country, and poultry farming, which will be coming up later on from 11 all the way to 12. My name is O'Brien Kimani, and this is Base Check. Welcome back. In the last 10 years, the government has invested more than 1.5 trillion Kenya shillings in the energy sector, from expanding our energy grid, of course, to deepening our energy mix. But the question is, how do we lower the cost of energy in this country? And of course, we have heard it from manufacturers who have always bemoaned the fact that electricity cost in Kenya is relatively higher compared to Kenya peers like Egypt and South Africa. And so that's why the conversation has been around not only how to improve the quality of power in this country, but also how to make it cheaper. But it's always good to put things into perspective. We have seen a reduction of about 25% in power cost in Kenya, but that is not enough. How much is enough? This is our conversation this morning, and I'm joined by the chairperson of Electricity Sector Association of Kenya. This is George Aluru. He is on my immediate left. Thank you very much, George, for finding time to be with us here. And of course, immediately after George left is Timothy Kipchumba. He is a solar power expert and also a partner at Questwork. Thank you very much indeed, Kipchumba, for finding time to be with us here. George, I want to start with you. First of all, when you look at Kenya's energy sector, what conclusions do you draw?
Well, thanks, O'Brien. I think one thing we must appreciate is that our sector is quite advanced in terms of attracting private investment. So there's a lot of private participation in power, which is not really the same for most of our peers, including Ethiopia. We have done a good job at bringing in private investment into the power sector. But of course, the current challenge really is the price. So this is a conversation we need to have and see in which way can we retain the good parts of the sector, while also trying to achieve this cost reduction. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a conversation, of course. That's why we are here, and we want to discuss it. What about you, Tim?
I do also believe that Kenya is reasonably advanced. We have one of the most progressive policy that has allowed us to quickly, in a very short period of time, less than a decade, significantly improve our capacity of power, which is a really good thing. We must appreciate that. Our cost of power is still reasonably higher than peers. But part of that cost of power is not just necessarily, it's also our tax. Government charges a significant amount of tax on the cost of power. So there might be an opportunity there. There is still opportunity, actually an even bigger opportunity that would be available for the country, honestly, is to drive up use for the power. Now we are in a unique position where suddenly we have more power than we thought we might not have by now. And so because of that, entrepreneurs should, if they get a better price now, should be out there manufacturing. People should be using cooling technology. People should be, we should be doing more farming, because what that does now is that it increases use. So I think we are in a really good space. We are still more expensive. I mean, relative, for instance, to a country like the US, we are twice more expensive, which means that for us to truly industrialize, we do need lower cost of power. And I think that's a good conversation to have, both between government, between private sector, the people that are potentially generating the power, but also more importantly, between the people that are likely to be using the power, so that then Kenya becomes a competitive nation. But I do think that there are challenges. There are challenges with Kenya Power. There are challenges now around the fact that, okay, we have more power than we anticipated and we projected. But I think therein lies opportunity.
And you're raising a very interesting juxtaposition there, because you would expect ordinarily when the market is saturated, then you expect the cost of products to go to tank. But this has not been the case here in Kenya, George. How comes the opposite is true here?
Yeah, I think what we must first appreciate is that the way electricity works is not like any other commodities. If you have farm produce, you produce and you can directly access the customer, and based on that interaction, you determine the price. But the electricity itself is a regulated commodity. So it's a commodity where the power producer will go fetch for licenses, agree on a tariff, on a price at which they'll be selling the electricity, and then this would be a long-term tariff. So it's not in today's Kenyan market, we are not at the stage where we are facing real-time pricing. There are some advanced markets like in the US where this is the case. Like I think most of us saw beginning of last year, actually beginning of this year in Texas, when there was this big storm, and then the prices of electricity just skyrocketed, which means that the price actually reacts to the market directly. But in this case, in Kenya, we have a regulated market that then gives you a 20-year price, at least for the independent power producers. You have a 20-year price that is locked based on all your financial models that you had submitted to the government. So it's not that prices will automatically fluctuate with whatever is going on, whether it's weather or a certain other economic need. The prices are locked for a certain period to ensure that the project itself is financeable. And this is what really we must understand.
And also, it's also good to remember that, I mean, we can also say the situation is further compounded by the fact that you cannot store power.
Exactly. That's a really, really good observation.
You have to generate and use.
Yeah. Power, the moment you generate it, you have to consume it instantly. Yeah, so again, this is not like other commodities. Again, going back to agricultural products, you can grow your tomatoes, store them, you can probably even dry them and put them in storage and sell them whenever you think the price is right or the conditions are right. But for power, at this stage, whatever technologies are there for storage do not allow for that kind of long-term storage of the commodity. So then again, it comes back to how do we balance demand and supply. I think, as my colleague has also alluded to, really we must work much harder on our demand, because at the moment, private investors and also state parties like KenGen have been doing a lot of work in terms of generation. So there's quite sufficient generation in the system right now. But the thing is, demand is lagging. Demand is lagging. It could be due to delay in delivery of some of the Vision 2030 projects. I mean, if we had more use of the power that we already have, then again you spread a certain pool of power over more users. Again, you get efficiencies in the cost of using it. If more people are using it than if less people are using it. That is the case that is happening right now. We have our demand has not really matched up to the supply, and we really need to focus on that.
Because you are the one who brought about this conversation around the fact that we are generating more power than we are using, and so there goes the question: so who pays for the power that goes to waste?
Well, the Kenyans pay. Kenyan taxpayers have to pay. But and I think, to be honest, there was a mistake. There was a mistake with our optimistic view about our growth. We thought we would achieve a significant portion of the projects that were set out in Vision 2030. If we did that, we needed significant power. That has not come to happen for many reasons. For reasons as to what government thought was priority, to reasons like COVID, to the fact that our overall competitiveness as a country has not allowed us to export significantly and therefore, promote manufacturing. As a matter of fact, manufacturing has fallen down in this decade, in the last decade. But then, that's not, so we will pay. We will pay for that, what people call in the industry deemed power charges. The fact that we have gone out there, built a policy, which is the feed-in tariff policy, said, we want you to please come and help Kenya industrialize, get power. We invited investors. They came, they now gave us money, they now generated that power. So we will pay for that. We anticipate, there are several studies that anticipate that power prices will actually rise by at least 50% in the next half a decade. That's a controversial thing to say. But to tell you the truth,
but is it a fact?
Yeah, it is a fact when you consider the fact that there is deemed charges. You still have to pay the investors that went out of their way to risk their capital to meet the need of the government at the time. You owe them that, because in the end, the government is built on property rights. You have to respect the fact that investment has been done, and we must, unless we want to be a government that doesn't respect its own laws, we must be able to pay for that power. And so that's not very good news. But the real good news is that the most expensive power is lack of power. Honestly, if a country doesn't have power, it cannot industrialize, it cannot teach people, it cannot use technology, it cannot do farming, you cannot do cooling, you cannot store food.
Energy is a catalyst of economic growth.
Exactly. And so while this is a temporary pain, it's the pain that, okay, we found ourselves in a place where we now have a little more power than we have, and so it might take us another 10 years to potentially catch up with that power, but that's a very good problem to have. The conversation as to, okay, could there be opportunities for IPP or independent power producers to lower costs? That's a good conversation to have. But again, you have to do that within the legal framework, within the contractual framework of the independent contracts. But I do think it's a very good thing that we have excess power as a country. Many people in Kenya don't remember rationing. They don't remember rationing. You go to countries like Nigeria, they are the leading importer of generator sets for one reason, because they missed the wave of generation of power. So I don't think it's a bad thing that we have excess power.
And despite the fact that they have one of the biggest gas reservoirs in Africa.
Exactly.
Now, because we missed the boat by the river, so to speak, and we are finding ourselves in the middle of a very beautiful problem, in the fact that we have more power than we are generating more power than we are using. And so the conversation should be now, how do we ensure that we have proper uptake of the power that we are generating? When you look at the policies that we have put in place, are you convinced, George, that they are all geared at encouraging more usage of power?
Yes, I think, to be fair, yes, there's quite some policies that are in place, especially, and the biggest one, I think, for me would be the special economic zones, what we are doing around special economic zones. Because really, it may be really interesting for us to increase the customer numbers by connecting houses, but the real demand drivers are industries. So
what you call the large consumers.
What we can do to encourage these large consumers, we must do, and we must do as a priority. We must actualize our special economic zones. We must create other incentives, because the industries don't come to a country just because of the cost of power. We must make our labor work properly. We must make fair policies where we can have financial incentives for people to set up large consuming industry, like let's say iron smelting, things like that, huge industries. This is what will really drive our demand, and it will in the end also kind of act as a cross subsidy, because when our industries are consuming at a high amount, then it is easier for a distributor to then come close to an industry and get power across to the people situated around this industry. So for me, really, industry. Let's not just think power. Let's sit down with the Association of Manufacturers. Let's sit down with the big investors and ask, what are these things that you need to actualize your factories? What do we need to do? We should go out of our way, really, to encourage the growth of industry.
Help us understand things. If the power that we are generating today was in tandem with our power demand, would there be any difference in terms of power cost?
I would expect so. 40 to 50% of your power bill is taxes. If, in fact, we are consuming all that much power, it means that companies are producing. So it means that our GDP per capita, our gross domestic product, is growing. It means that there are more companies now that are employing more people, which means that those people are now paying income tax. It means that those companies are paying corporate tax. And so government might take the view that because industry has expanded, and there is now more wider tax base, there is a larger number of people that are paying taxes, I would imagine that the first culprit would be taxes. So government could reduce potentially that 40 to 50% tax because they are already making money in other places. I honestly think that I think it's a much broader conversation for anyone in government and in private sector and development environment to say, how can Kenya actually, in the areas that they are very competitive, like agriculture, if we actually make agriculture work and then we do a little bit of value addition around agriculture, you have more tax revenue, you have more forex impact, you have more forex income, you have more people employed now. Those people are now paying tax. Farmers are actually paying taxes. And so you can now afford as a government to lower the cost of power. And if you can lower the cost of power, it has the other impact, the ripple effect, that now everything uses power. So our products will be more competitive in the region. We will now become even more a greater destination. And so I genuinely think that right now the kind of specialists that we need to support government and development agencies are not just power experts. I think they are small business experts, small industry experts, large industry experts, people that are saying we need to move our income per capita from potentially $2,000 to $4,000 in the next other decade. How can we do that? How can we move a great portion of our people to earn double? Because when they do, our taxes double. And when our taxes double, we can afford to lower the cost of power. Right now, what people are not saying is that we are not saying that a great portion of our bill is taxes. And so because it's taxes, we need to raise the tax base because we cannot afford to lower taxes immediately because of all the debt obligations that we have, we took in the last other decade.
And so following up on your juxtaposition, Do you think then we should not be discussing how to lower the cost of energy in this country, and change our conversation to how do we attract more investment, especially in manufacturing, to ensure that you attract more investment in manufacturing, whereby you create more jobs, and then you create more demand for power, and in the process you lower the taxes? Do you think that's the conversation we should be having?
Yeah, honestly, yes, but of course we can't also be ignorant of the fact that Kenyans are complaining about the cost of power. So if there's something that can be done in the immediate, let's do it. But long term, if we really want to see a lowered cost of power, it's about how do we encourage our small industries to become big industries? How do we encourage cottage industries all over the grid? And again, when we encourage growth of manufacturing at all its levels, then you also have a better grid. Because today you have grid extension to rural areas, and people are not really productively using the electricity. So that means more costs on running the electricity line. So KBC is faced with more costs to manage all these distribution lines, because we are not using it enough at the tail end of the line itself. So when we encourage more consumption, when we encourage more productive consumption, and I'm talking about electrifying your posho mill, things like that, not light bulbs and whatever you do in your house, because all of us it's really natural that when you're in your house, when you leave, you switch off everything. You make sure that it's not consuming.
Yes.
So if we can encourage more industry, then we can not only have more jobs, but we can have an even more efficient grid, because now the grid operator would have demand from different sides. And then I think also coming back to what my colleague was discussing, when the consumption is at the right level, then these machines are running at a more efficient level. Today we have certain power plants that are running 5%, 10%. And these machines, when you run them at these low numbers, then the efficiencies are even worse, which means more maintenance costs, which means more costs, which again comes back and builds to the cost of power. So the more we can encourage consumption, the more likely we are to see a reduced long-term cost of electricity. And maybe also just to put all this in perspective, we must also understand when we say that Kenya, relatively compared to Ethiopia, compared to Egypt, compared to South Africa, has a higher cost, we must interrogate these countries. How are they generating their power? South Africa, you are like 85% coal. Do we want to go coal? Yes, coal is cheap, the cost is cheap. In the end, you get a lower tariff. But as a nation, I think we have stood with the League of Nations and made this decision to go renewable. So if we want to go renewable, there will be some costs. Over time, of course, these things will be lower. The cost will go lower because the running cost is lower. But in today's market, you generate with coal, it's cheaper. In Egypt, you're generating with gas that they own, gas that they then onward give free to the power generators, which then, of course, implies a lower cost. Today, if you have a gas plant in Kenya, you'd have to get that gas from somewhere. Maybe in the future from Tanzania, maybe it will be lower. But let's also try and see that in these other markets, there's subsidies. There's some kind of subsidy on their cost of electricity. And that really makes it not a banana versus banana kind of comparison. It's like apples and bananas.
But because the sources of energy are completely different.
Source is different, and also the taxation regime and the kind of incentives that the governments offer is different. And maybe even if we then go a step further and start talking about the Middle East, where we are seeing energy auctions, where prices are coming in really low, then there the whole environment around the risk of the country is much better. The risk is seen as better. How do we get our country to a state where an investor coming in would foresee the political risk, economic risk, and price it well in a way that we can then have lower prices. Today we get loans at 14%. In Europe now, that's like 1%, maybe 0.something%. So if you're putting your money in a country, there are other things that you look at, and you try to price that, and that really hits our cost of electricity. Very
good. I want us first of all to now refocus our energy and to the county of Kisumu, where our reporter Wycliffe the sentiments of wananchi in Kisumu County in regard to the matters economy, the energy sector, as well as the curfew that was lifted yesterday by President Uhuru Kenyatta. Wycliffe, let us get to hear what people in Kisumu County are up to this morning.
Well, thank you, O'Brien Kimani, back at the broadcasting house in Nairobi. Here in Kisumu, the reaction isn't very different from the rest of the country. Residents here are quite elated and happy about the lifting of the curfew that was announced yesterday by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And it is coming as a relief or a reprieve to many sectors here, be it the business sector or the transport sector, O'Brien. And at this point, you'll allow me to engage a gentleman here, Ochieng Omo, who is actually the secretary for the Matatu Owners Association here in Kisumu, to share with us his sentiments regarding the lifting of the curfew. Mr. Omo,
yes,
you are live on KBC Channel 1, and please, in your position as the secretary for Matatu Owners Association here in Kisumu, what do you think the lifting of the curfew mean to operators here?
So we thank the President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, for accepting our call that we made on 19th, that we requested for the lifting of the curfew. Let me tell you, for the past 1 year, when we were dealing with the containment measures of COVID-19, the matatu industry in Kisumu County alone had lost over 10 billion shillings due to the night curfew, and you remember the percentage of passengers which were allowed to board, only 60%. We had lost a lot of vehicles. Most of our vehicles had been impounded by the financial providers because of late payment of loans. Over 50 vehicles had been sold and auctioned because of that, and a number of employees in our circles, over 200, lost their job during this corona pandemic. And now, because the government gave us the COVID-19 vaccine, our employees are 90% are vaccinated, and we requested for the lifting of the curfew. Yesterday, the whole of the town, the transport industry, were very happy. And in fact, we did not even know that by 8 p.m. we could even get passengers who were booking for Nairobi trip at night. We were surprised, and that means the country had been waiting for this, and we thank the President so much for listening to the plea of the matatu industry operators. You remember on Mashujaa Day, when we were celebrating, that is when we said Uhuru Inie Kiongozi. And yesterday it was confirmed on, it was Madaraka Day. Yesterday on Mashujaa Day, the whole country confirmed ya kwamba Uhuru Inie Kiongozi. And for this, tunajua tunaenda kuchapa kazi sawa sawa.
Yes. It must be a double boost for the matatu for the transport sector, actually. Just recently, a while ago, the president announced full operation for in the public transport sector. What do you make of this? Do you think this is quite important for the operators, and do they stand to make a kill from this?
Not necessarily a kill, because if you say a kill, that means we will earn more than expected. Our passengers had been suffering because during the containment by 60% passengers in a matatu, we had to raise our fares a little bit, and the passengers complained. Immediately, this measure was reduced to 100% capacity in PSV vehicles. Then we automatically also reduced the fares. Just some weeks back, you realized there was also an increase in fuel prices due to the VAT that was adjusted. And we pleaded also, and we also heard that it was reduced by some percentage. We are very grateful. And now that our time for work has been extended from 14 hours to 24 hours, we know we shall now go and work. And the business community will also, with us, we shall cooperate and make sure the economy of this country is back to normal.
Thank you, Mr. Omwa. Brian, that is Mr. Omwa, the secretary of Matatu Owners Association here in Kisumu. Just being optimistic, actually exerting confidence that the lifting of the curfew actually will be a reprieve to the sector. And just before I conclude this live link, I can allow me, Brian, to engage Mr. Isaac here, who is the national chair, who is the chair of Kenya of Compass here in Kisumu, actually, to share with us what he thinks that the lifting of the curfew and alongside the stimulus package that was announced yesterday actually mean to the commerce sector in Kisumu here. Welcome. Tell us, what do you think about the lifting of the curfew in terms of tourism and even the hotel sector here in Kisumu?
We all know that during the curfew period, most businesses suffered, and the hotel industry was suffered actually the most because they had to lay off their workers and tourists were not coming. We hope that with this lifting of curfew, foreign tourists and local tourism will now start growing. But it's not just that. Even people who run shops and people who run industries suffered because they were unable to have the workforce that they need throughout those shortened hours, because for 8 hours that was very short. And we are quite happy that the president, being a businessman himself, saw the need to check with the Minister of Health and see whether it can be lifted. Yes, we as business community had made pleas that it should be lifted, but it had to be done in a scientific manner to find out whether the pandemic is lowering or going up. And he said it's going down, and we are urging Kenyans to make sure that they adhere to the Minister of Health guidelines on this pandemic.
And how do you think, or after how long do you think the industry will pick up now the curfew has been lifted?
Industry should, is difficult to say, but maybe in 6 months we should be where we need to be. There were certain stimulus packages which were announced. They may not be sufficient, but is a good start.
Thank you, Mr. Gina. O'Brien, those are some of the statements as expressed here in Kisumu. Like I told you when I was starting this, it's not any different from those expressed in different parts of the country. Actually, the business community and even residents here are actually optimistic and exuding confidence that now with the lifting of the curfew, actually the economy, the 24-hour economy will come back to normal, and residents here will actually earn from the 24-hour economy. We are going to sample more views actually, O'Brien, and we will package that in our subsequent bulletin. But as for now, allow me to hand it back to you in studio so that you can continue with that discussion. O'Brien.
Very well, Wycliffe, back there in Kisumu. And the gentleman there was very, very ecstatic about the lifting of curfew. And we hope that the business community will take this opportunity to expand their operations so that we can have a 24-hour working economy. You remember when the former president came into power, the conversation around the economy was how to create a 24-hour economy. And one of the biggest challenges back then was the fact that we never had enough energy.
Yeah.
Now we have it. How comes we are not having the growth of the manufacturing sector is not in tandem with the growth of the energy sector?
Mm-hmm. So we are a member, as QuestWorks, we are a member of Kenya Association of Manufacturers on two fronts. One is that we began to assemble a Kenyan model bike that has been doing reasonably well, 180cc as well as 162cc, but also as a construction company, reasonable size, not so big, just about 100 employees. We are a member of KAM, and there are several, I think there are a lot of opportunities that government could continue to partner with manufacturers, and not just manufacturers alone. I think more broadly, small businesses. I think the real significant conversation to have is how can government actually increase income per capita of Kenyans? When people are more richer, when people are just more rich and more wealthier, they shower with hot water, they buy meat, they buy cement.
They don't have to use karai.
And it's so serious because you can predict the consumption of meat and the consumption of cement of a country just by the income capita of the people. What you see today, seeing more than say 14 million people on our CRB, you see people poor. You see that people are reasonably, we basically need to increase income per capita. And the only way to increase income per capita, we've already been shown by countries like the US and China and Hong Kong, is to spur private business. Private business employs more than government in all countries around the world. We need to get more salespeople, we need to get more manufacturers, we need to get more entrepreneurs to access capital. We need to get a Kenya construction bank so that contractors in Kenya can take the Kenyan contracts as opposed to those contracts going back to China. We need to get manufacturing bang, so that we need to give tax cuts to manufacturers. We need to have a more predictable fiscal and tax regime. We cannot go 1 year, every year, changing our tax environment. It just becomes extremely unstable.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in the last half a decade, that if it were possible to actually have a more predictable, the same predictability that we gave the power sector, if we could give that to small enterprises and give that to manufacturers, Kenya will then, we'll have all this growth of small enterprises, we'll have all this growth of manufacturing companies, and what that does, increases income for the country and makes us more competitive. We can export more. One of my clients today is processing avocado. Because we have excess avocado, the avocado that never gets to be exported, they are processing it to make oil.
Yep.
What that does, it allows them to make 3-4 times more in income, because it's now a refined product. But that is already a factory that will use machinery. They're using power. They're employing a decent number of people. The entrepreneurs are barely 35 years old. They are selling several containers of oil, avocado oil, in Egypt. If we can actually, if a great portion of government can become an enabler for small enterprise,
yep,
I believe you solve not just the cost of power, but you generally solve the cost of well-being.
And he's bringing a very interesting concept here of how do we make Kenyans to consume more energy. And when you look at the power usage per capita in Kenya, is it for about 600?
It's something like, on average, the average Kenyan consumer uses something like 100 kilowatt hours a year, which is like really low.
Absolutely,
it's absolutely nothing.
If you compare that with a country like UK, whereby you'll be talking about 3,000 kilowatts per hour. So that's.
And I think again, coming from what my colleague was saying, if we compare our country is a country of 40 million about, with other 40 million kind of countries, that's your South Korea, it's Spain. They are consuming in instances 100 times what we are consuming per capita. So, and I'm not just saying consumption for the sake of consumption. Of course, consumption is related to the quality of life. This is something that has been studied. As my colleague says, there's a real link. And what we want is that our 40 million live almost the same life as the 40 million in South Korea or in Spain. So we need to ensure that our people can first access electricity. I think there we are doing quite well, I would say. I would say at least on access to electricity, we are moving. But then once you have this access, then what do you do with the electricity? Which now comes back to what, again, my colleague was saying. How do you encourage small industries? How do you convince me to shift my portion mill from diesel to electricity? It's on cost, it's on taxes, it's on how do I get it licensed. If it's a small business and I need to go through a very tedious licensing process, even if the cost of power is cheap, I would say, why would I want to spend all this time going through cabs, through this other authority, the other authority, and taxes and this and that? The whole ease of doing business locally. I know we have been doing a lot of comparison between Kenya and other countries, but then we must also then move to our own local people. How do we make ease of doing business for them comparatively light? So that if I wake up today and I have this business idea about manufacturing something, I know I can access power easily. I know there's just one license for whatever is required from the government. If you can unify the licensing, make the process easier, even if it's taxation, and that, make it really clear and simple for the ordinary wananchi. Today we are faced with a plethora of licenses. Yeah. Then you can have many agencies coming for you, NEMA coming for this, KEBS for that, KRA for the other thing, and people are generally scared. And you'll be scared to start a business because you just don't know what sort of complications you'll run into. Yeah. I think if we can work on the ease of doing business for our own local small-time investors, the SMEs, let's make life easy for them so that they can expand and then push their product out of the country, not just to focus on our own local markets.
And Kipchumba was also bringing a very interesting concept here. Look, you see, when you look at access to power in this country, I mean, we have grown from about 35% of the entire population in the year 2014 to around almost 80% of the entire population. But this growth in terms of access has not been in tandem with usage. And he's bringing in the concept of empowering people financially so that people can buy bigger television sets. People can buy blenders, to make juice and smoothies and so much. So how then do we pick up that conversation and ensure that we deepen the usage of power in this country?
Yeah. But absolutely, you just got it right on point. It's a real question around income per capita. How can we actually make your mama tom, my mama tom, to have disposable income? When you look at the financials of KPLC last year, you realize they had 1.3 billion loaves. When you go to the balance sheet, their balance sheet has weakened a little bit. But what it's telling is that about 35 billion of their current assets is receivable, which means that they have not been paid 35 billion. There are places that were connected electricity, but people cannot even pay 200 shillings for their bill. And so the real question is not connectivity anymore. We've now solved a great portion of the connectivity question. The great problem now is income. We need to put money in people's pockets. And the only way we know how money is put in people's pocket is by government becoming a servant of entrepreneurs. The moment you have government officials becoming like dedicated relationship managers for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, for the moment entrepreneurs are respected, more like the politicians are respected in this country, the moment you have more farmers gain prestige because they suddenly employ a significant number of people in the country, the moment you have one-stop shop to support an entrepreneur, they don't go to all these 10 places to try to get their licenses for NEMA, get their licenses for City Council, get their licenses for Kenya Plant and all these other bodies. The moment you have an idea and you can access capital quickly because we now have this export bank that works with African Import and Export Bank to make sure that a Kenyan entrepreneur can access capital. The moment today you begin and say, Tim, I like where the construction is likely to go in the region, I like where renewable energy is likely to go in the region, you can tap a Kenyan government bank and they can give you a development bank that can give you, say, 5%. Of course, enterprises will spur. When enterprises spur, the first thing that happens is that people create jobs. People start to spend. People start to afford holidays. People start to go to Masai Mara. They start to go to Mombasa. They start to buy meat. When they buy meat, they need to roast the meat. Instead of just roasting the meat, they now start to learn that, okay, the more tasty meat is the one that is smoked. Then they invest in something that is called a roaster. It's $2,000. Now, that's a whole industry that is being created for people that just like roasted meat. So I think the real conversation for anyone in public office today, in government today, in development, impact, and more generally to entrepreneurs is let's please find a way to connect the young people, to a more simpler environment where they can just begin. And we see this, young people are enterprising. I visited a friend of mine in Eldoret. She's a fantastic young lady. She's barely 30 years old. She employs 10 people making school uniforms. It's an amazing thing what she's doing. That's 10 young people that have just been employed. That's a whole industry that has just been created. So I think that if we can shift the conversation of government's role in supporting small entrepreneurs, we will solve one of the two biggest challenges that we have today. Because what are the biggest challenges that the president has today? We have the cost of living that is extremely high, which we are now trying to fix it by announcing a 30% cut. That is a really welcome thing. But the other thing is also that the young people don't have jobs. There are 9 million young people today that are jobless.
They are there in the streets.
And then number 3, we have very high cost of debt.
And this number is growing.
It's growing.
On an annual basis,
we are growing.
Yeah.
And it's not just a problem of Kenya alone, it's a problem of greater Africa. More than 500 million young people need jobs. And we are also faced with a unique situation that we have one of the youngest population in the region. I think our median age as a country now is 18 years old. So we have everything going now. We have power that is available. Mm-hmm. We just need to have government support enterprises so that more jobs are created and more income is now available for people that are working. And those people, inadvertently, will buy more things that will need more power, and overall cost of power will go down.
You know, that's a very interesting breakdown of how we can actually, ramp up electricity consumption in this country by making people have more money in their pockets. But in the same vein, how do we make more larger consumers consume more power? Even as we attempt to make, smaller consumers, consume more power.
Yeah. No, I think, as I said, really, it's about incentives, and not just the cost of power. So we must reduce our cost of power as much as we can for the large consumers. If it were me, I would even suggest, let's say, and this is a personal view, take out the taxes for the large consumers, because today we really need to encourage more large consumers, because then you have more jobs. Immediately, someone puts up a smelting plant, maybe they will employ 1,000 people. So it's worthwhile to actually think about reducing the taxes on power for certain categories of consumers to encourage that growth, the economic growth that we want to see, plus the jobs. And then now the other things are around how an industry operates, because the industry has many inputs. There's the efficiency of getting your raw materials in. Do you have corruption in the route to get your raw materials in? Your licenses, can you operate 24 hours, as you just mentioned? This was a really big goal for the Kibaki regime, which I think we should go back to. We should really seriously go back to, because I think what we've also not mentioned is that the way we consume power in Kenya is quite unique. We start consumption at a certain level in the morning, then by 8 p.m. when everybody's home, you're switching on your fridges and everything, we experience a peak. So we have been planning our generation capacity based on that peak. But that peak doesn't last that long.
It goes up
by 10 p.m. everybody's asleep, you're switching off everything. So then the demand goes down like this. But remember, the capacity we have is still at that level of the peak.
Yeah.
So then you have this capacity in the night that more or less is not being used. If we had a 24-hour economy, if we had security, if we ensure that we have proper transport, because if you're working for a factory in industrial area, you want to know that you can come out of your workplace, get on a matatu at 3 a.m. and arrive at your home in Kiambu safely. So it's about things like security. It's about enabling the right kind of licensing processes. I think the government is trying to do that, or has tried to do that over the last 10 years through the things like e-citizen and making the licensing process a bit easier. And so we really must look at it wholesomely, because if I'm an investor, I wouldn't just bring my factory to Kenya because the cost of power is cheaper than Ethiopia. There are investors who went to Ethiopia and then they found out it's hard to get their dollars out of the country, and they moved back. Yeah. So these other things around what an industry needs to operate in a certain area are what we should really put a lot of effort on, together with trying to reduce the cost of power.
Let me also find out, I get to hear your thoughts around, you see, when the conversation around the cost of electricity, has really peaked last year and this year. And interestingly, this is when COVID struck, and a lot of people were laid off. Companies closed their businesses, and that's when people started feeling the pinch of high electricity costs. But now that the economy is set to roar back, and the curfew has been lifted, instead of discussing how to have sherehe once the curfew is lifted, how do we pick up conversation around creating a 24-hour economy once again. I would want to hear your thoughts on that, but that is after we go to a conference whereby a conversation around how to treat the elderly in the society is taking place. Let's first of all hear from them and understand how to treat our senior citizens in this country.
So you'll start telling them your name because they may have forgotten.
My name is Honorable Catherine Nyamato, a former member of parliament from Nyamira in the Gusi community. The question of, walking people at night, this is a phenomenon that we started hearing recently, but I believe it is hysteria. It is also something associated with taking drugs. You will find that most of those people, or young people, claim that they met witches at night. They are people who are involved in drug consumption. And because of drugs, they have all these things working in their heads, hysteria, imaginations. So I don't think really it is anything that has evidence, and where somebody can say, I met a young person with so many people walking them around. No. It is hysteria, and this happens even around exam times in schools. It is people are involved in drugs, and it is one way also that such information is used, to deal with enemies, and especially when it comes to lynching of the old women.
All right. Thank you. Maybe you can also address the issue of land.
My names are Honorable Alice Chai, former women rep, Nyamira County. About witchcraft in Kisii. Actually, we can now say that Kisii, even the name, when you mention that you are a Kisii, even people get scared because of what is going on. And actually, this is not the first time that people are being lynched, and we question ourselves, why is it it is widows and those that are aged, that they are the people who are witches. The underlying factor is about land, envy, jealousy, that people think that they are going to stay forever, they are not going to die, and then they want to eliminate others so that they can take over their properties. And this is what we are saying, no. Hata kama, even if there is that witchcraft, must you kill? Is there no laws that must be followed so that we can bring these perpetrators or they can be charged, or there is something that needs to be done? So what we are saying, we are condemning what is happening in our Gusii land. It is wrong, and we are not, even if it is politics, even if we are looking for votes, something which is bad, we have to condemn it. People, they have their rights to be alive. Let God take judge them at the right time. But when you go killing somebody, it is not, you cannot take the law into your own hands and then say that you are doing the right thing. So that is my stand, that we need to come out boldly and deal with what is happening. Women also need to live. It is not that they are witches, so that you use that avenue so that you eliminate them from the society. They are part of us, they are part of you, they are your mothers, they are your sisters, they are your grandmothers. They need to survive. So the issue of land, let people accept what they have and own it. Grabbing and using force so that you can inherit what does not belong to you, even God is going to judge you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. We could take a question before we conclude with Dr. Kerubo to sum it up. Yes?
So, do you think that the law has failed in ensuring that this thing does not happen? So I think it's not the first time. We have been hearing cases several.
This is mob justice. We cannot say that, they don't even give the law to take its own course. This is people, they come at night, mob justice. You know what mob justice is?
And
again, you know, who knows who is a witch?
There's
Because
no evidence.
yeah, what is the evidence? You know, if you have enough evidence, then that's the time that now you are going to be judged. But now there's no evidence, and you are doing it in a crude way. You are waking up. You don't want to follow the normal process so that we can give light to the law enforcers.
And it has been going on for the last 20 years.
Yes.
Nobody has been jailed. All the killers are going scot-free. They finish killing one widow and then they move to the other. The chiefs are on the ground. The government is on the ground. Somebody needs to account for their actions. If you kill somebody, we expect you to be arrested. But if you are arrested today, released tomorrow, you are encouraged to go and kill another person. And also for land buyers. Most of them, they are people with money. The people are behind the killing because they finance them. They finance them and also they get them out of jail. Because nobody, and they intimidate people who could normally go and they give evidence against them.
Having a conversation about how to treat our senior citizens, you know, coming in the backdrop of some rising cases of lynching on allegations of witchcraft among the old people in the country. And so the conversation is, how do we treat our senior citizens? That conversation continues. And of course, we are back in studio where we've been discussing various aspects on how to deal with power cost crisis in this country and how to deepen the use of energy in this country. And we are doing things in the presence of George Aluru. He's the chairperson of Electricity Sector Association of Kenya, and Timothy Kipchumba, who is a director with QuestWorks, as well as solar energy experts. Before we went for the break, I wanted to pick up your mind on the conversation on rebuilding a 24-hour economy after the whole thing was shattered by COVID-19. So how do we pick up that conversation?
Just to say also, like many other Kenyans, I'm equally excited that the COVID is out of the way. I think that there will be more businesses that will just grow immediately. We will probably start to see more transport. We'll start to see more travel. We'll start to see restaurants begin to pick up. A great portion of retail also go up. So I expect that that's actually good news for the country. As a matter of fact, it's something we should say it should be applauded. But the other thing also is to say, I agree with you that while we should celebrate that, we are now out making merry, we can go out now, we can stay out. I think as a country, we should probably be having like another measures for promoting 24-hour economy. And I think that conversation begins with, again, this is what I know better, which is how can we actually spur small enterprises and manufacturing? Because if we do, if I ask you today, Brian, if you have a brother or a cousin that needs a job, most likely you will tell me 10, 20 people in your life that could use a job. Can they work at night? The answer is absolutely they can work at night. They can work at night if it's in a place that they can earn a decent wage. They can also work at night if it's in a place where they are safe. And so, like George said, and I think we've built on this conversation, if there is anything that government should do, I think it's really just to find ways to spur and support small enterprises. If we support small enterprises, we create jobs. If we create jobs, people can work 24 hours.
People can work 24
I don't think
hours.
we lack talent in this country. Some of the most industrial people around the world are Kenyans. I think what we should just need to do is support them.
Because now we have to wind up. We're expecting some conversation or some bilateral talks between the Malawian president, Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, and his Kenyan counterpart, President Uhuru Kenyatta. And before we go there, I want to also, before I let you go, have your feeling on things. The government has come up with various measures, to ensure that the cost of energy comes down by about 33% by the 24th of December. Do Do you think this is achievable within such a short period of time?
I think at the outset, anything is achievable. But then what sort of concessions are required? For me, if you look straightly at tax and levies, it should be achievable if you go after tax and levies as aggressively as possible. But then again, realistically, would the government do this in the kind of scenario that we are in terms of debt? That's another question, and that probably I'm not the best person placed to answer this. But yeah, in general, it should be achievable. It's just that there needs to be quite a collaborative effort. Whether you need to sit down with the power producers, you need to sit down with Treasury and really crack our heads around what we want. I think all of us really want that our industries grow. We want that we have a conducive environment in terms of cost of power and other matters that encourage industry. And I believe if we can collaboratively work towards this, it should be achievable. In terms of specifically 3 months, maybe that's not so. But if we take a long-term view on it, this is something that can be achieved.
So it's likely to be a long-term process. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us, of course, this morning to help us with this discussion around the cost of energy and how to increase use of the same. Your time is highly appreciated. Let's keep on engaging. Thank you. Of course, ensure we take this conversation forward. Very good. We've been talking to the chairperson of the Electricity Sector Association of Kenya, George Aluru, and Timothy Kipchumba, a director at Questwork, and of course an expert on solar energy matters. This is BizCheck. We are live from Broadcasting House. Coming up next is a conversation on poultry farming in Kenya and how to improve this subsector. That conversation is coming up next.
About the importance of ensuring that you're disciplined, to a healthy lifestyle.
When it comes to diet, they say you are what you eat, and actually that's the truth of it. Because actually whatever you eat, it dictates your nutritional status.
Sometimes you may be very consistent and disciplined, but the results are not coming so fast. What should motivate me to keep going for 6 months, 8 months? I'm still, holding on to this. And most of the time, these foods are not so interesting.
When it comes to weight loss, you're not going away from the food that you're used to. It is the same food that you're used to, but now you're eating with discipline.
Do you have a news story to share with KBC? Get in touch swiftly on email newsroom@kbc.co.ke, call 0723-892-654 or 0734-780-124.
أحببتك اللهم محبة دوالي وأحببت محرابك.
Mojawapo ya mambo ambayo msikiti unafaa kusaidia nao katika jamii ni kama vile kuwa na uongozi wenye uadilifu na kuzuia fitna katika jamii.
Twafaa tufunzane, msikiti ni sehemu ya amani. Kila Muislamu ana haki ya kuja msikiti na vile vile akajua ni sehemu tulivu.
For the rest of my life, I'll be with you. I'll stay by it. I've loved you from day one when it was even close to impossible for me.
I didn't ask for you to love me. Respect, Christine.
It seems you have a lot of savings then.
Me, I'm a baby girl. I deserve soft life. Si lazima ikuwe pesa yangu.
Mimi na wewe mambo ya kesi tustahili kuongea.
Si sana kindani, kidogo kidogo tu.
Kwa koti tutakutana huko.
Kwa nani?
Ni Mark.
Wow. Stop asking questions.
Hello, Christine. Christine, what's wrong?
We need to fire Lawrence.
She's in the living room.
You need to know which side you're on. You need to open your eyes and know which side you're on, okay?
We take it on at the right time.
Honorable Musalia Mudavadi.
The Honorable Mutahi Kagwe.
Chief Justice Martha Karambuko.
This is KBC, is the voice of Kenya.
Asking the right questions.
I don't know how it made you feel as speaker who is presiding over a house where members can be compromised with 10,000 shillings.
We keep our guests comfortable. A mission to ensure our audience gets a complete story.
For a few hours or so, I thought this is it. My end has come.
If really we want an end of this pandemic, we must fight.
Our goal, to tell it as it is for the benefit of our viewer.
And I'm sure we will have good discussions.
All right.
That will make probably your viewers understand KDF better.
With 21 radio outlets.
During a live interview on KBC TV, Chief of Defense Forces General Robert Kiboshi.
Jaji mkuu kwa mara ya kwanza katika mahojiano yake ya kipekee na runinga ya KBC Channel 1.
And 2 TV stations covering over 90% of the entire country. The message always gets home. KBC, the home of on-air TV interviews.
Good. Welcome back. You're watching this check where great conversations are always our mainstay. We've been having an awesome conversation around the cost of energy, how to improve the cost. How to improve the cost of energy in this country, and of course, how to improve access to the same. And of course, you have had it all from the experts. Time now to wear different hats and discuss issues around poultry farming. Did you know that Kenya has about 32 million birds, and it's one of the biggest poultry farming country in Africa? That's true. But the industry has gone through some turbulence in the recent past because of COVID-19, where consumption of poultry products went down, as well as competition from the neighboring countries, where Kenya has been importing a lot of eggs from Uganda. We want to see how this conversation can be structured, and of course how we can boost the poultry farming in Kenya. Ada Kimani is the CEO of Cookie Poultry. He's joining us now to guide us in this conversation. Thank you very much, Arthur, for your time. When you look at the poultry industry in Kenya, it contributes about 9.2 billion shillings, to the Kenyan economy every year. How is it now in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic?
Okay. Maybe I would start first by describing basically when we're talking about poultry farming, we're basically talking about broiler farming, we are talking about layer farming, we are talking about the new improved kienyeji, and we are talking about the kienyeji that most of us grew up with back home. So if we're looking at it in that aspect, I would say one, in terms of broilers, broiler farming, which is now my main area of expertise, has been greatly affected by COVID. As we were sharing just before this interview, I've been doing this business since 2009. So I've been in the business for about 11 years, basically doing broiler. I grew from doing about 800 birds to about 6,000 birds a month. But come COVID, all this came crumbling down because one, you find there was a big issue where the lockdown came in. There was the issue that most companies now went under in terms of hotels closed, tourism went down. So guys were unable to pay debts, were unable to sustain the business anymore. So some of us closed down. Still, during that period of COVID, our neighbors, Uganda, you find imports came in terms of even for the chicken meat, the broiler meat came in, eggs came in. So again, farmers, as much as COVID put us down, again, we have cheaper imports coming in, which we cannot compete with. So yes, it's greatly affected us during this period.
This has been greatly affected.
Yes.
Before you closed down your operations because of COVID-19, how was business?
I would say before I closed down, business was good. In terms of, when I mean business was good, for a broiler farmer, you're basically a caretaker. In terms of, you'll be given the day-old chick, you'll be given the feeds. So basically, your work is to take care of that. Number two, before COVID, call it around 2017, 2018, business was good in terms of tourism was okay, so you'd find our sales were doing okay. Come 2019, business started slowing down. Now come 2020, things became a lot different. We crashed really badly because one, I think as you also heard the president talk about it yesterday at Mashujaa Day, the cost of feeds has really gone up. I would tell you, when I closed in 2020, I was buying a 50 kg bag of feed at $29.80. Right now, farmers are buying the same feed at 4,100 currently.
That's almost double.
Almost double. And the unfortunate part is the cost, the sale price has not gone up. Whatever prices guys were selling in 2017, 2018, 2019, are they still
the cost
prevailing?
of eggs have not changed.
Nothing has changed. The cost of meat hasn't changed. You find that in 2020, maybe cost of production per kg was about 280. Right now, cost of production per kg should be about 380. So if somebody comes to your farm and tells you, I want to buy your chicken at 300 kg, you're already at a loss of 80 shillings. Yes.
Now, apart from COVID, I mean, there were signs that, the poultry industry in Kenya, was headed for some tough reckoning. And, COVID just came to exacerbate the situation. Even before COVID-19, the poultry farmers were complaining about high cost of feed because of high electricity and the high cost of production.
Yes.
So where we are now, what do we need to do to deal with this situation?
Maybe first I should highlight, just as you say, those challenges. You find farmers are having a big challenge in terms of feed. Cost of feeds are quite high. For broiler farmers, you find the cost of production, 75% of the cost of production is feed costs. So you can imagine where a price is doubling, meaning things are really going quite high for a farmer. The next thing is the cost of chicks. So the cost of chicks, I would tell you, when I started this business, I think we're buying chicks at 60 shillings. Right now, a chick is at 85 shillings, which directly affects, the cost of chick just directly affects the cost of fuel. Broiler farming depends on electricity. For broilers, they feed 24 hours, day and night. So one, that affects us. Number two, for the first 3 weeks, we need to heat those birds. We've been using gas. Initially, I think a 50 kg cylinder in 2020 was retailing at about 5,000. Currently, we're buying the same at 8,000. Again, you see, it's almost doubling the cost what we did there. Number three, just as you mentioned, is the cheap imports from Uganda, which are also affecting us greatly. And number 4, sorry to say, there are people called seasonal farmers who are also affecting us. And when I say seasonal farmers, I mean the farmer who says, let me keep some chicken because it's Christmas. Let me keep some chicken because there's shortage. Because you see now there are people who, their core business is chicken farming. So this farmer who comes in and out affects them greatly. Now, to move to, I think, what maybe the government or what can be done to salvage this, I think we need a conversation around the imports. We need to have an open discussion on what should come in at what price, so that also locally we can be competitive. We're also seeing a situation maybe where we also need now to have a conversation around GMO, so that we're able to lower the feed costs. We are also looking to have a conversation with government in terms of subsidies. Just to put it in perspective, chicken from Brazil to South Sudan and chicken from Kenya to South Sudan, we cannot compete. We are neighbors, but that chicken from Brazil will come much cheaper than what we can produce here. And the issue being that their government has subsidized most of the things for them. The feeds, their inputs are really subsidized.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, the issues that you have discussed here are issues that are not going to change, or dynamics that are not going to change in the next 1, 2, 3 or 4 months. You know, some of them may take a bit of time. So in the immediate, what is there anything that you feel the government can do or the private sector can do to change the fortunes of the flagging poultry farming in Kenya?
What I would say, in the immediate, you know, there are conversations we can have, quite quick conversations we can have. And one of the conversations would be, we are urging farmers to join cooperatives so that we can have the bargaining power. Just as I told you, there's already one formed. It's called Broiler World Cooperative, where farmers are trying to come in together to give a to have bargaining power. Using this bargaining power, we can, one, go to the chick producers and tell them, look, our consumption is per month 30,000, 40,000 birds. How can we help each other? We buy your stock, you lower the prices for us. That can be done instantly. We can have a conversation around soya, because soya is one of the major ingredients in feeds, and it's missing. I think Kenya is a great importer of soya. We don't have enough. So we can have a conversation where government will say, look, then we'll go out there, we'll get the soya, we'll give the millers, provided millers are able to lower these prices within the next month. Yes.
When you look at the industry now, I mean, you're talking about, you used to have about 8,000 birds, you know, before you closed down business, and you are not alone. There are so many people who have who are forced to close down their poultry farming business because of COVID-19. Do we have an understanding as to how many people have managed to close or have been forced to shutter their business because of COVID-19?
Unfortunately, we do not have, because as I told you, the problem I think also as poultry farmers we've been facing is we've not been united. You find poultry farmers in Kiambu have their own organization, poultry farmers in Nyeri have their own, those in maybe Rift Valley have their own. So you find the dynamics have been quite different for all of them. Unless maybe people come up and say, look, I closed. We do not have that statistics to say that. We know maybe 20, 30 or 100 farms have closed. But I will tell you that even if guys haven't closed, most people have really scaled down. You'd find maybe farmers who are doing 30,000 may be doing maybe 3,000 right now, 4,000, because the business is no longer sustainable as is right now. Yes.
How long do you see the industry taking before we can go back to pre-COVID levels?
I think it will take some time. And when I say it will take some time, I'm putting in mind that we are headed into an election year. I would say, like for broiler, our biggest consumers are hotels and tourism industry. Locally, maybe the consumption is not that big in terms of maybe household, but in terms of conferencing, all that, which have really slowed down, that has really affected us. So I would give it another almost 1 year for us to go back to volumes in terms of production. In terms of pricing of feed, as I told you, maybe government can intervene. already, I think 2 days ago, the Speaker, there's a motion, we're trying to lobby MPs to help us in having a discussion with millers in how we can bring these feed prices down. So we're really hoping that will move forward, and maybe we can see results in maybe a month or two.
Very good.
Yes.
I mean, we're having a conversation around how to change the fortunes of Kenya's poultry sector. Of course, it's a critical subsector in the agriculture industry. And of course, we are having Arthur Kimani in the studio. Now, we want to take you to the county of Kilifi in the town of Malindi, where pension fund managers are meeting to assess the damages caused by COVID-19 to the industry, and of course the way forward, where June Karisa is on standby to give us more information. June.
Good morning, O'Brien. We're coming to you live from Malindi, and today we are joined by Sanlam Investments East Africa, one of the largest financiers, fund managers in East Africa. Just to give us an overview of what they're doing here is that they're meeting boards of trustees of individual pension scheme funds managers to just expose them to the opportunities that lie in this particular market. So I'm joined by the CEO of Sanlam, Mr. Jonathan, just to give us an overview, of course, of what they are talking to them about and what are some of the opportunities that lie in this particular sector. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much, June, and nice to be with you this morning. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Stitchbury. I'm the CEO of Sanlam Investments East Africa, and we're gathered here in Malindi today for our first client conference in over 2 years, because obviously of the pandemic. And we've gathered our clients together from not just Kenya but also Uganda as well. Most of them are institutional clients, most of them are pension fund trustees, but we also have a wide range of other stakeholders, including regulators, who've joined us here today. And the thing that we're talking about is really what can pension schemes do to increase their returns to their members, so that they can generate better returns, so when pensioners retire they have more money to retire with. Traditionally pension schemes have invested the majority of their assets in government securities like treasury bills and treasury bonds, and that continues to this day. But what we've been seeing over the last couple of years over the pandemic is a number of new exciting investment opportunities are coming to the fore, and we've got a bunch of presenters in here today who are talking about new investment opportunities, and this can mean things like private equity. Private equity is companies which are operating in the region but are not necessarily listed on the stock exchange. And if you think about it, that's most companies. We've also got speakers here talking about infrastructure. How do you invest in infrastructure? Pension funds are a large pool of captive capital. They can think long term because their long-term liabilities, people's pensions, are 20 years down the track. And so they're the ideal institution or investor to think about investing in infrastructure, where you have to invest up front and you get long-term returns over a long period. Other areas which are quite interesting just now are a great big theme just now is sustainability. How do you make sure that your investments are sustainable and they're not exploitative or robbing from one community or another? And so we're going to be having speakers about that as well. And then we're also discussing power. How do we make Kenya's power cheaper? How can we as investors invest in that sector and reduce the burden to the men and women on the street, so that our cost of electricity in particular goes down? So it's a really interesting forum. We've got a whole panel of experts in here. We've got some of the largest pension schemes in Kenya represented by their trustees. We've got regulators, we've got other stakeholders, investment advisors and so on. And so we're really hoping for a lively debate over the next 2 days.
One of the issues that has come out is some of these trustees look for foreign investors as opposed to local ones. for example, like Sanlam, to help them invest these particular schemes for their clients. What is that to you?
Well, I think if you look at the Retirement Benefits Authority's data, it actually shows that only a very small portion of Kenyan pension schemes are invested outside of East Africa. I think it's less than 2%. So I think pension schemes want to invest in Kenya or in Uganda or in the region. They see the attractiveness of the investment opportunities here, and they don't particularly want to take a lot of currency risk, because remember, if you start investing outside the region, you are automatically taking a risk that if that currency weakens, you're going to realize a loss on that. So I think there's a lot going on in Kenya and Uganda and elsewhere in the region. Clearly, people haven't been able to travel over the last couple of years. Until yesterday, we couldn't even travel at night. And so, it's an exciting time for us to really open new doors, to think again, not just to do the same old that the people have been doing in the past, and to look for other ways that we can help not just generate returns for our pension schemes, but also help use that pension scheme, use that money to help fund an expansion of the economy in the region.
The pandemic, of course, has and must have hit you in a very large way. Is the economy reviving, and what are some of the gears that you have put in place so that you can ensure that people stay afloat who are attached to your investments group?
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I mean, when the pandemic first struck, we saw stock markets around the world all fall. I'm very pleased that they've all sort of seemed to have recovered, and that includes the stock markets in Kenya and Uganda as well. And so that's been encouraging. We've also seen more investors wanting to think a little bit laterally, think about, what can we do that is positive for the environment, positive for the economy, positive for power, positive for infrastructure, positive to the way that we live our lives as well. But yes, some pension schemes did suffer more than others, and I think those ones in particular which were linked to economically sensitive sectors like the hospitality sector, tourism, they've obviously, some of the members of those schemes will have had difficult times over the last year or so. So let's hope that now that we're opening up the economy, let's hope that now the curfew has been removed, let's hope we're going to see tourists come out here for Christmas, and we see the economy revive again. And certainly our numbers, our projections are that we're going to see much stronger economic growth at the end of this year and also going into 2022.
Is it possible to just level it to two sectors or two particular markets that this particular trustees can invest in, say tourism or infrastructure or renewable energy? What are some of these markets that they should look out for?
Yeah, well, I think rather than talk about sectors, I would talk about what I would describe as an asset class. And I think an area which is totally unrepresented in Kenya is private equity. And I think we have lots of opportunities to invest in private equity in the region, and I think that's going to be my tip for you. You're going to see a lot more of that taking place in the years ahead.
Thank you. That was the CEO of Sanlam Investment East Africa, one of the largest fund managers in this particular East African region. Just to break it down, O'Brien, is I am an individual who, for example, is banking my money with a particular scheme. This particular scheme has its own board of trustees that are managing my money to ensure that at the end of my retirement, I have maximum interest or maximum returns of my shares. And these are the people who are here just to be told you can invest in this particular area and this particular area, so that your clients who are me are able to reap more benefits at the end of their working period. So of course we're going back in just to hear some of the interesting conversations that are going in, and of course we'll keep you an update at the top of the hour on some of the developments of this particular conference. But for now, I'm handing it back to your brand, Kimani, in studio.
Very well, thank you very much, Janae Karisa, back there in Malindi, where pension fund managers are meeting to discuss the way forward and, of course, to analyze the market and see how do they get out of the COVID-19 mess and flourish, because they have been severely impacted by the impact of COVID-19. And, of course, we'll be giving you more information later on in our bulletins. Back in studio here, our conversation is around the poultry farming, where we're trying to analyze the situation, look at the market, and, of course, create different scenarios on what we need to do to safeguard the interest of this important sector. How many people, do we have an idea of how many people are engaged in poultry farming in Kenya?
You see, when we talk about poultry farming, when we look at the value chain involved in poultry farming, from the miller, from the breeder of chicks, from the farmer, the workers, the butcheries, the supermarkets, that value chain, I think would be approximately about 15 million people are involved in that value chain if you were to consider the whole value chain. If you were to consider maybe in terms of farmers, I would say maybe 3,000 farmers. And when I say farmers, I mean usually anything, I think we consider a farmer, anyone doing about 500 birds is considered a farmer in terms of that is the economical number to keep to be able to sustain you as a business. Yes.
Another thing that, that is failing the industry is the fact that a lot of people, when they had that people are making money in poultry farming, they rushed into this sector without expert knowledge on how to go about it. So how do we create knowledge around poultry farming here in Kenya so that people can be armed with the right information?
Okay. Just as we had discussed just earlier, I told you there are people called seasonal farmers. Seasonal farmers are the guys who are out there, so they have, in terms of the structures, when I say structures, they have the housing for the chicken. So what do? They wait. They wait for Christmas, they wait for Easter, they wait to hear there's a shortage. Because at the end of the day, the turnaround time for a broiler chicken is about 38 days. So that person, if today they were told there's a shortage, they are very sure that in the next 38 days, the shortage might still exist. So they will keep the chicken and sell at that point. But now the problem comes at times, they might think that shortage is there, but 3 weeks in, the shortage is no longer there. So this person needs to cash out. What do? They'll go to the market. They are told, look, the price is, so for you, a normal farmer, cost of production has been about 280. They're told, if you sell at 260, we'll buy. They're ready to cash out because they don't want to lose out. So they'll cash out at 260 and leaving this farmer, who that is his full-time job, at the mercy now of that broker, who will now again buy the chicken at 260. So what basically as farmers we are trying to do is we are trying to join hands, come into cooperatives, because another factor we are really looking at is, let's say an interesting factor. If I was to ask you how much is beef or mbuzi at your place, I'm most likely sure it's almost the same price as what I'm buying. But if I was to ask you what the prices of chicken are in your area against mine, the prices are quite different. So also as a cooperative, we are looking to fix the price. And we're not looking to fix the price in a bad way, but we're looking to fix the price to also secure our interests. So that we say, look, at the end of the day, the production is at 380. So no one should sell or buy below that price of 380. So that this business, it's just a business as any other. For it to be sustainable, we need to do that. Yes.
But you also have people who are in this business, and I understand poultry farming is a business whereby you need to understand the economy of poultry farming, otherwise you can be making zero returns and in the process you burn your fingers. So is there a way that these people can be empowered, or people out there can be empowered, so that their poultry farming business can remain resilient?
Yes. So one, I'll tell people that just as you said, there's nothing that comes easy. So one, it takes time to learn. I will tell you, in the 9 years, I've burnt my fingers a few times. Number two, I've told you, for a poultry farmer, you're basically a caretaker. you do not know the quality of the chick, you do not know the quality of the feed. But I will tell you, for an experienced farmer, by the time chicks arrive on his farm, by day 3, he'll tell you these ones will make it or they won't. Because already there are signs he will see and notice, okay, here there's a problem. My chicks have a problem or my feed has a problem. In terms of education, I would say anyone wanting to venture out, I know Kenchik have classes. I don't know whether, before COVID they had, I think Wednesday or Thursday, they had classes where they teach farmers on how to keep the chicken. So I would ask farmers maybe to contact them and talk with them. I'll also urge anyone wanting to go in, I'm sure near your vicinity, near your neighborhood, there's a farmer who's doing it. So you can go have a discussion with them and maybe they can guide you on how to go about it. Yes.
And from the 9 years, I think 9 or 11 years that you are in the market,
yes,
what lessons did you learn that you believe that you can share with the people? I'm very sure there is some person who is listening to us and they're saying, wow, I think I would want to try my luck in poultry farming.
So I will say in terms of the farming. So in terms of farming, I would say any new farmer wanting to venture out, I will tell you it is not easy. It will take time for you to build expertise. It will take time for you to build capital. Because again, poultry farming is capital intensive. Just to give maybe a picture, I would say to do about 1,000 birds, you'd need maybe about 300 to 350,000. And this money, you'd have to have it upfront.
Yeah.
Poultry farming, you cannot say, I will start with 100, by the time I get here, I will be... No, you'd have to have this money at the point of starting. You'd have to know who to engage in terms of chick producers. You'd have to know which feeds are doing very well in the market. Because unfortunately, if you pick the wrong feed, you're doomed. And for broilers, you're really doomed because, you see, after 6 weeks, if you've not achieved your weight, you're out. That's a loss, and there's now no other way you can mitigate it. You're done at that point. Yes, so I'll tell them to take time, build capital, visit before you engage, go around, talk to farmers in your neighborhood. And when I say talk to farmers, just don't go talk to a farmer who you've never supported. Start by supporting that farmer. Instead of buying directly from the butchery, just go to that farmer, tell him, every month I'll pick 5 from you. I will, my uncle, my auntie, just support that local farmer. So by the time you're going back to him, he's like, this guy has supported me, now it's time for me to support him. Yes.
Is poultry farming profitable?
Yes, it is profitable. If you do it right. Yes, it's profitable if the market is right. Because again, the poultry farming market is it fluctuates too much. Today, I can tell you, we can wake up and ask prices today, you'll be told maybe 240 a kilo. 3 days from now, you might be told 300 a kilo. And you're happy and you're like, oh, things are working out. 3 days from then, you're told 200 a kilo. So it really, it depends on what are you looking out for. There are people who will venture, there's someone who ventures out and says, look, I have the capital, so I'm looking at numbers. As much as the margins might be less, but for me, the volumes will help me meet my target. There's someone who will be saying, look, I do not have that much money, so I'm looking to keep 300. Once I slaughter this 300, I'm hoping to sell at a premium price to my neighborhood, to my friends, and make money. So again, it depends basically how you want to do the business. Do you want to go large scale? Do you want to go small? Yes.
What are the profit margins in on average in poultry farming?
I can't really give it a figure, because at the end of the day, I've told you, for a farmer, you're not you do not know the end product. Because see, here is, you have a chick that you're not the producer of that chick. You have feed that you're not the producer. So if anything goes wrong in between there, yes, I can be saying, look, I'm hoping to make 50 shillings a bird. But at the end of the day, I'll either make a loss or make 10 shillings a bird. But I know mostly on contract farming, it's about 30 shillings a bird. So you'd find maybe, yes, about 30 shillings a bird or per kilo. Yes, that would be, yes.
And per kilo would be like one bird or?
No, a bird, most birds, for you to be profitable, when I say a bird, I mean, so what usually happens, we put cost of production per kilo. So let's call it, let me just go a bit lower. Let me pick something like 300 per kilo. So if that bird achieves weight of 1 kg, it means it has spent 300 bob a kilo. But if it achieves 1.5, it means that bird, cost of production of that bird is 200. Okay, so the weight is what guarantees you profitability. So if you have better weights, you're more profitable than someone who achieves, let's say you have two farmers, each doing 500, same inputs. This guy achieves an average weight of 1.1 or 1.2. This guy achieves an average weight of 1.4. 1.4 is much profitable than this other guy. Yes.
There has been argument that cost of feed, animal feeds, constitute about almost 80% of the entire cost of poultry farming. How true is this, from your experience in the industry?
Yes, that is true, because again, we can just do a simple mathematics in terms of, we say we do 1,000 birds. So like for broiler farming, you have starter feeds and you have finisher feeds. During the period of that about 38 days, each bird should consume 1 kilo of starter feed and 2.8 kilos of finisher feed. So in total, they've consumed 3.8 kgs of starter feed. 3.8 per bird would be, and here we are talking about 50 kg bags, meaning would be doing about 60 bags. So if you say 60 bags times the 4,000 I was talking about is about 240. The same 1,000 birds, to keep them is about 300,000, 350. So you can see clearly that the feeds outweigh anything else in that math. Yes.
So is there any way that you can reduce these cost outlays?
I think once, when we look at the costs, I think the variable costs would be, just as we said, would be the chick prices. And I've told you the chick prices are proportionately directly affect, because at the end of the day, if you say a chick is 60 shillings, so if today I'm buying it at 60 and tomorrow 85, that's a difference of 25 shillings. So if you're doing 10,000 birds, that's immediately an increase of 250,000 in your cost. So one, we can look at chick prices. Number two, we can look at feed prices, because once you lower feed prices, which again, as you said, constitutes about 75 to 80%, you've really changed that pricing.
You can decide to enter into the business. You can either decide to become a hatcher, whereby you just hatch chicks and then you sell. You can decide to be buying chicks and then you mature them into big birds and you sell them, or you can get into the eggs value chain where you just buy eggs and you sell them. Between the three, where are the risks are bigger?
For me, I would say the risks are equal in all, because here's the thing: if you decide to be a hatcher, hatcheries have biosecurity. For them, biosecurity is top-notch, because at the end of the day, for you to have a hatchery would mean you're in an isolated place. You should not be having, I think usually the radius is about 1 kilometer. You should be in a kilometer radius in terms of there are no people around you, there are no other livestock around you, because see also bird diseases come through air. So if you have other birds, that will affect. So you have here a parent stock which needs to be very healthy. You have a parent stock which is feeding and producing now these chicks. So one, the kind of investment there is quite high. Not many people can afford. And if you were to look today, the number of hatcheries in Kenya, I think they're not more than maybe 5 or 6 because of the cost of investment. So I would say that has its own risk, because one, if the parent stock gets sick, you cannot produce eggs. If you cannot produce eggs, the parent stock is feeding. So how do you feed that parent stock if you're not selling the chicks? So one, that has its own risks. Then I think you said the next is a farmer who now again, as I said again, is a caretaker. He's been given chicks, he's been given feeds that he does not produce himself. Then the last one is the guy we call a broker. So still also for the broker, the risk is this. When things are bad, people will rush to you. They'll be like, oh, buy from me, buy, do, yes, here. But you'll go in the market and you'll source for customers at the prices you're getting. But when things improve, the same farmers will leave you and now go directly into the market. So you as a broker will also go out of business, because now the farmer will say, no, the market is good enough, I'll go directly into the market. So you'll be left out.
What has been the impact of imported eggs into the Kenyan market?
The impact,
and how comes we cannot compete with Uganda in terms of eggs production?
I think the simplest explanation for that is source of raw materials. As you know, even for our millers, most of, again, maize, soya, most of the ingredients they get from Uganda. So one, Uganda is ahead of us in terms of production, in terms of the ingredients of the feeds. Again, number two, Ugandan farmers are also big farmers. At the end of the day, you'll find there are farmers in Uganda doing 20,000 layers, 30,000 layers, because again, the feeds are quite cheap there, so the capital investment is quite lower than what we are doing here. So you'll find brokers will opt to do this. Let me go to Uganda. This guy will be able to give me 3,000, 4,000 trays at one go. Then I'll just ship them in a truck and sell. In Kenya, because of that high cost of feed, high cost of chicks, high cost of electricity, our farmers are much smaller. You'll find most of our farmers are doing 5,000 birds, 4,000 birds. So a broker or somebody or a food processor will be out and look and see, look, this guy it will take him about a week or two to give me what I'm getting in a day from Uganda. So they'll go directly into Uganda, pick the eggs, which are much cheaper. They'll pick the meat, which is much cheaper there, and bring it into the market, Kenyan market. Yes.
For farmers, and especially who are on the on the last end or on the last page of the value chain, like brokers who sell eggs, for them to break even in the Kenyan market, how much would one egg cost?
For me, I'd be using maybe statistics for 2020 when prices were a bit low. I think an egg would cost about 8 shillings. Would be about 8 shillings to produce, which is quite high, because at 8 shillings that means a tray should be retailing about 240. Yes. So 240, most brokers will buy from farmers maybe at 260 a tray. Then now the broker again will go and sell again either to a supermarket or to someone else maybe at 300 or 290 a tray. Yes.
There was a time when Kenyans used to buy one egg at 15, 20 shillings. But then because of the influx of eggs from Uganda, the prices have come down to, I think, 10 or 12 shillings.
12 shillings, yes.
12 shillings.
Yes.
Are farmers making profit with this kind of margins?
Like currently, most farmers are not making profits because, as we said again, feed prices have really gone up. As I've told you, the statistics I was giving you, that's maybe 2020 statistics of 8 shillings. Maybe right now, currently, they might be doing about 11 shillings in terms of production. So most farmers right now, I'm sure, are breaking even. Because you see, also for layers, a farmer will keep a layer on the farm for a year and a half. So for you to get maximum profit, you need it to stay in your farm for that year and a half, for you to recoup the cost of buying the chicks, the feeds, whatever you've done to meet production. So right now, I am sure most farmers are just hanging in there, breaking even, waiting for things to improve. Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Arthur, thank you very much indeed for finding time to be with us this afternoon, and of course sharing with us your insights on poultry farming.
Thank you.
Your time is highly appreciated. We've been talking to Arthur Kimani. He's a poultry farmer, even though his business has somehow gone bust. But let's hope that he rise up again and keep going. You've been watching Base Check, and as you can see on your screen, our eyes are also on State House, where President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to hold bilateral talks with visiting Malawi heads of state, Lazarus Makadhi Chakwera. Let's first of all listen to the Army Band.